The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Well, what are we going to talk about now? Terry McLaurin has a contract. He's going to be on the field on opening day when they play the New York Giants. No more speculation about the possibility of a holdout. Are they going to trade him? Are they going to play hardball and say, hey, you got a contract, you got to show up? That's all over with. What happened here? Why did it take so long? Maybe those questions will never be answered. But right now you got some real stability heading into the season. I don't think that the organization wanted a situation where Terry McLaurin was disgruntled but playing. So no more excuses. Now, did they overpay for a receiver who's going to be 30 years old in a couple of weeks? Yeah, maybe a little bit. But we don't know the guaranteed money on the deal. We've all heard $96 million, and you go, wow, $32 million a year, average per year, that puts him in the top six. That's great. Well, again, it's guaranteed money. And remember this, it's a 3-year extension, which means at the end of the deal, in the third year, it's actually 4 years from now. So he will be 33, going on 34, I believe. So I really don't think he gets to the fourth year. If he does, that means he's Jerry freaking Rice. But I don't think he's that. Of course, Daniels will get better, you would think. And maybe that means that Terry's production will go up. He had a record year for him last year and set a team record with 13 touchdown catches. But remember the first couple of games of the year where he wasn't getting the ball? And to his credit, because, Terry has always been a mensch on and off the field, when asked about the fact that Jaden Daniels wasn't getting him the ball, he said, hey, don't criticize the kid. And eventually they found each other, and then that Cincinnati game was magical, right? I mean, when he hit the game-winning touchdown pass there, and they were off to the races. So this is important. This is good. Happy for Terry McLaurin. Happy for the team that they got it done. And, whether or not this sets a precedent for future negotiations, I think Adam Peters probably did a good job with that because they got guys coming up for new deals. Laramie Tunsil is going to be coming up at the end of the year. He'll be going into his last year of his deal next year. Frankie Louvu, who's been a pleasant surprise. That was not considered to be an enormous pickup when they signed him, and he's proven to be a terrific player. He's one of the top 100 players in the league. And then Marshawn Lattimore, depending on how he plays this year, and Devo Samuel. So there's going to be money spent. All that cap space, that's going to get chewed up in the next year or so. And then after next season, only 2 more years of this, even though Jaden Daniels is under control for 5 years. You've got the rookie contract and then the 5th-year option. But you're going to want to have a new deal in place going into his 4th year. So it's only 2 more years of this, and then you're talking about probably $70 million plus, if he continues to play like this. And so this is, I think, a good job on the part of the team as well. Again, we don't know the guaranteed money. And the fact that we don't know the guaranteed money, 18 hours after we found out the deal was in place, indicates that it's not a bad thing for the team. Like if the agent wanted you to know what the guaranteed money was, we'd know the guaranteed money by now. We don't know it yet. So anyway, just to look back on what we've had here for, well, look, it's 5 weeks, right? Today is the 26th of August. So you go back to July 15th, which is 5 weeks ago, I believe, 5, maybe close to 6 weeks ago. Terry McLaurin at the Eastern Motors dealership where he was shooting a commercial had a news conference and went for just about an hour. And just his opening statement alone, I mean, he was bubbling over with frustration and made it sound like, maybe we've reached the end of the road here.
I've been pretty frustrated, I'm not going to lie. everything that has transpired up until this point has just been disappointing and frustrating. I've wanted to continue my career here. I've created my life here. My wife and I have bought our first home here, so this has been somewhere where I've always wanted to be. And just to see how things have played out has been disappointing. Obviously, I understand everything's a business, but at the same time, I want to put myself in a position where, I'm valued and, I feel appreciated and things like that. And, unfortunately, that hasn't transpired the way I wanted to. So, I'm just trying to take things day by day. And at the beginning of this process, I honestly just wanted to, for things to work out. And, I thought things were going to kind of be more progressive than they have, and so at this point it's kind of just up in the air.
Has it surprised you that they've taken whatever tack they've taken, and have you now opened your mind up to being somewhere else?
I haven't got to that part yet. It has been disappointing. Going into this offseason, I thought there was going to be more progress, and I know those discussions were there at the beginning, and since OTAs and minicamp, we haven't had any discussions. We haven't talked at all, and that's tough. Obviously with camp coming around the corner, and so I haven't thought that far yet to really, see what's next in the standpoint of leaving or not. Because I want to be here. I want to make that abundantly clear. I really appreciate this fan base, this city. This place has become my home. I've poured a lot of myself and given everything that I've can every single day since I've been here, through the wins, losses, good, bad. And, but at the end of the day, you do want to feel valued and you do want to feel appreciated. And I think, how the market is today, it pretty much conveys what guys of my caliber are deserving of. And I feel like I fit that in that box because of just how I've always carried myself on and off the field and the value I know I bring to a team. And I know I bring to my teammates, and I know that I bring to an organization. And, I don't want to put myself in a position to feel like you have to beg for somebody to see your worth and your value. You feel like you've put that out there year in, year out. Everything, previous regimes and even now, I've done everything that's been asked of me. I'm not perfect at all. I've definitely made mistakes, but I've always led with the right foot. And I've tried to put myself in a position to be a person that can be valued and respected amongst his coaches and his teammates, but also be a dog on the field. I don't want to get that mistaken. I feel like I'm one of the best receivers in this league. And, it's not because of me just feeling that way. I feel like I've proven that, and I'm going to continue to work hard to prove that. And that's kind of where things are. So I haven't really, gotten to the part of trade or not. I want things to work out, but at the end of the day, it takes two to tango, you know what I mean? And so however things go these next few days, I know camp's around the corner. I'll talk to my agent and we'll go from there. But overall, you just want to be appreciated and valued for who you are and what you bring to the team, and also what you feel like you could continue to do, because best believe I don't feel like I played my best ball yet, and I still feel like I have a lot of great things that I can do and bring to a team. And so it's disappointing that it's gotten to this point, and the toughest part is being away from my teammates, honestly, because I came into part of OTAs and things like that with the assumption things were going to progress a lot quicker than they have, and it's disappointing because I've always been a team guy and a leader. And the great thing about, the great thing I take away is I've gotten a lot of support from my teammates. I've played golf with them, I've hung out with them, I've talked to multiple guys, and they know where I stand. They know how I feel, and I think the tough part is they have to decipher things through the media, and they know I'm an open book. So everybody I've talked to, I've been 100% open and honest with them of where I stand and how things have been. And so I know I got their respect and their support, and I'm gonna continue to prove that when I'm on the field, whenever that time is. So just because I'm in this scenario doesn't change the fact of who I am and my character, because I'm gonna continue to be Terry McLaurin no matter where I'm at, and that's who's God's built me to be. That's who I've tried to prove who I am, and I'm gonna continue to walk in that.
That was Terry McLaurin, July 15th. That's the last time we heard from him at length. That's the last. They said a few things walking off the field at training camp, but that's about it. And to the credit of both sides, there's been very little said about this. And I think that helped. There was no, this is it, news conference from McLaurin. Now, he did hold out for the first 4 days of training camp, which cost him $200,000 in fines. He did ask for a trade at the end of July, but the team has said very little. I think that's been helpful. And McLaurin and his agent, we haven't really heard from them. We will, I'm sure, tomorrow, at least McLaurin. And today we'll hear from Dan Quinn when they announce the 53 for the final roster. But there's been no, Dallas Cowboys-like back and forth, and I think that's been a good thing for both sides. Now, this is the 14th, so this is now 12 days ago. Cliff Kingsbury was the first, I thought, listening to all the news conferences, the first one to express frustration. So, again, we're going back 12 days, right? So it's almost 2 weeks. But this was Cliff Kingsbury revealing about as much as anyone had done up to that point over how the organization was feeling about the holdout.
I've been pretty frustrated.
That's not him. This is Cliff Kingsbury. Here we go.
I mean, there hasn't been a ton of contact with him. He's been here, but he's been working with the trainers. So until he gets back on the grass, that's when we'll start building that back up.
At that point, what can you do at that point to make sure it doesn't take a long time?
Yeah, I think that's one of those deals. It's just time on task, and luckily what they had last year to build a lot of rapport and chemistry, and Terry understands our system going into a year or two, so that should expedite the process. But to me, it's time on task together on the grass is really the only way that you can continue to build.
Yeah, so there's the first real little crack where it's, oh, no, he knows the offense. He's staying in shape. He's rehabbing the ankle. He and Jaden are fine. Jaden was asked about it. He said, no, don't worry. We're going to get him done. That to me was the first time I heard, okay, enough is enough. Let's get this done. And it was reaching the point where I think the fan base, I can't speak for the whole fan base, but it felt like the tide was starting to turn a little bit towards the Commanders, and especially for the exhibition games. When he didn't show up at all, Trey Hendrickson was on the sidelines for Cincinnati in that Monday night game wearing Bengals gear, and Terry wasn't even there. And then Saturday he showed up, and it was 85 degrees, and he's wearing a hooded sweatshirt. That was kind of a pouty look, not good. But I think, things obviously went in a different direction in the last couple of days, and they got it done. Now, this was Dan Quinn when McLaurin came off the physically unable to perform list. This would have been the 17th, so this was 9 days ago. This was Quinn. Having had enough at this point. I think, now they had to kind of massage this in a different way. This ankle injury, which NFL insiders say was legit, it wasn't like they just made it up. But I have a feeling he would have been practicing if he had a contract. But he was away from the team, away from the practices. He was working with the trainers on the side. And was unable to practice. Then he comes off the PUP list, and they start practicing again, and he's not practicing. And this is where I think Quinn finally starts to express some frustration.
Dan, just to clarify, will we see Terry today out here doing anything?
Not at the practice portion. He had a big part of the run that went along today. But I'm not going to play Where's Waldo, guys, all right, moving forward. So just so we're clear on that. So Terry's return to play format is no different than any of the other players. And so I'm not jumping at you, Ben, but I wanted to make sure, the next question doesn't go down this line.
So that will be the Where's Waldo part of this story when the whole thing is written out. And hopefully it's written out with another Pro Bowl season for Terry McLaurin and another great year for the team where maybe they take the next step and get to the Super Bowl. Who knows? But this has been a long and winding road, not just July 15th when McLaurin had that Eastern Motors news conference, but going back to the offseason where he walked out of the optional team workouts, then was fined $100,000 for skipping the mandatory minicamp, which he had done in 2022 as well, and then signed that first extension. And then all the way through the developments of camp, not showing up on time, asking for a trade, looking at times like he was pouting to get to the point where everything should be just fine for opening day. And as for the meaningfulness of preseason, I think you get an idea of that. Like, nobody's saying, "Oh my God, Terry and it was not on the field," and he is going to be 30 years old, and the fact that he's probably not in full football shape. Got to watch out for injury early in the season, pulled muscles, things like that. Although he does keep himself in great shape and has not missed a game in 4 years. You just never know. Now, a couple of numbers here from Barry Zberluga of the Post, where he looks at this deal and looks at the age of McLaurin. And he writes, this is Zberluga in the Post today, age wins always. In the past 15 NFL seasons, dating back from 2010, 17 receivers aged 31 and older have accounted for 25 1,000-yard seasons, according to Pro Football Reference. Most were produced either by some of the best pass catchers of their era, Andre Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald, Steve Smith Sr., Anquan Bolden, or by players who were go-to targets for some of the best quarterbacks ever, Wes Welker and Julian Edelman with Tom Brady, Reggie Wayne with Peyton Manning, Jordy Nelson with Aaron Rodgers. Okay? The only potential Hall of Famer who Terry McLaurin has played with in the 6 years of his career is Jaden Daniels, and that's a long way away. The quarterbacks that he's produced with, as Barry points out, he had a 900-yard season with Case Keenum and Dwayne Haskins, a 1,000-yard season with Alex Smith, Haskins, and Kyle Allen. He produced a 1,000-yard season with Taylor Heineke and another with the combination of Heineke and Carson Wentz, and produced a 1,000-yard season with Sam Bleepin' Howell, for goodness sakes, Barry writes. So there's two things to take into account here. One, production for receivers over 30, not good. But on the other hand, if you have a great quarterback, your chances are obviously increased for doing that. And to think that for the first 5 years of his career, the dreck that he played with, I mean, outside of Alex Smith, who had a really good career and was a number one pick, by the time he's playing with Terry McLaurin, he's coming off a leg injury, which almost cost him his leg. I mean, basically playing on one leg. Remember, Terry McLaurin was drafted the year after Alex Smith got hurt. So his rookie year, he didn't have Alex Smith at all. His second year, he's got a combination of Alex Smith and Dwayne Haskins and Kyle Allen. I mean, Kyle Allen and the late Dwayne Haskins, with all due respect, those are not top-flight NFL quarterbacks. And Alex Smith, at the point he was in his career with the injury, also wasn't that great. So, there's a lot of different ways to look at this, but I think for what he brings on the field and off the field as a leader, as a representation of what Dan Quinn is trying to establish with culture, and has gone a long way to doing that with the help of Terry McLaurin, it's a win-win for both to have him back. And how much they got in guaranteed money, that'll tell some of the story of who blinked on this. But whoever did, they've got their top wide receiver back for their top quarterback, and let's hope that they pick up where they left off last year. Coming up, we'll get the view from the ESPN crew with Dan Orlovsky and Ryan Clark, and also Field Yates as they weighed in on this. We'll get their thoughts and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
I'm trying to think of contract holdouts in the past in Washington. This might have been the longest one with Terry McLaurin. Now, back in the day, before we had free agency in the NFL, remember, didn't come in until 1993, you couldn't really hold out unless you were John Riggins. And what John Riggins did in 1980, after having a great year in 79, and just a heartbreaking loss to the Cowboys in the final game of the season, where it was a crazy scenario that if they won the game, they would win the division, and if they lost the game, they were out of the playoffs. And a 66-yard touchdown run by Riggins put him up by 13 in the fourth quarter, only to have Roger Staubach pull off the last comeback of his career when he hit Tony Hill for the winning touchdown in the final minute of the game. And that rankled Riggins, because he thought that was a team that could have gone all the way, and that was an opportunity missed. And then he had the offseason where he wanted a contract extension. He had a contract, but he wanted it extended. And he went to training camp and then walked out and sat out the entire season of 1980. So that was a lot different than this, but he didn't have a lot of options in those days. There was no free agency. So, even if the contract ended, where was he going to go? And then famously, Joe Gibbs showed up and talked him back, and, the rest is all history. But in this case, McLaurin had a contract, and if he wanted to go to free agency, that it wasn't going to be easy this time either, because if he played well, they were going to give him the franchise tag. And if he didn't play well, yeah, he could walk, but his value wouldn't have been nearly what it is now with Washington. So he got the deal done. It didn't bleed into the season, and it just gave us some diversion from what is becoming more and more a meaningless exercise, and that's exhibition football. Training camp is not as long as it used to be. It's not as hard as it used to be because the players are now in shape. They don't have two-a-days anymore. They don't hit very much. But this was something that we could talk about in addition to, didn't he look good catching passes from the jugs gun and stuff like that. So the deal is done. It was kicked around as it broke yesterday on NFL Live. Dan Orlovsky, Field Yates, and Ryan Clark, who is hosting the show. And Orlovsky got his first crack at it once the deal for McLaurin became public.
Massive, needed. Yeah. You weren't a real contender in the division without Terry McLaurin. I also think, just bring it to the football field, this offense without Terry McLaurin was playing in red zone spacing in the open field. Meaning, when you play down in the red zone as an offense, everyone talks about how the field gets shrunk down. The defense only has to defend 20 yards of depth, 30 yards of depth. It would have been the case in the open field without Terry McLaurin like that. Teams would just have played so much closer to the line of scrimmage. Now, with Terry back, you get the vertical presence of your offense back. The Jaden Daniels rookie season that we saw with so many of those magical throws downfield, not only the clutch ones, but that connection. It also allows Debo to live in Debo's role. It also allows the Luke McCaffrey to live in the Luke McCaffrey role. So the impact that he has on this football team and its ability to win games, I think, is on par with the Jamar Chase and a Justin Jefferson because of the way that he allows that offense, and specifically Jaden, to push the ball downfield.
One more football note. You said they're playing with red zone spacing right now. Now they can go back to normalcy, but in the red zone, he also was their best player by far last season. Last season, when Jaden Daniels targeted Terry McLaurin in the red zone, he was 12 of 14, 9 touchdowns. Like, that's bonkers, silly video game numbers. On top of the football impact, I think we all know this, and I've talked about this throughout the offseason. He's on the short list, if not the most respected player in the entire locker room. This is the kind of guy that could one day win the NFL's Walter Payton Man of the Year award. That's the kind of respect that Terry McLaurin has around the league. It's not easy to deal with any contract negotiation. It's especially difficult when this is a guy who has been through so much and been sort of the exemplary part of the locker room. Obviously, Jaden Daniels' arrival has totally changed the trajectory of this franchise, but Terry McLaurin was the kind of player that did everything right during the most difficult times for Washington RC. This was a must-do to get done. I'm glad they found some middle.
Yeah, for me, it's about common sense prevailing, about understanding what Terry McLaurin means to this team, not only with this production and what we see on the field, but what he means to this team in the locker room, how he helped a young Jaden Daniels become the offensive rookie of the year. And the one thing you don't want is to have this team set back by not signing one of their best football players, but also one of their best people. And if you're the Washington Commanders, you're trying to figure out how to make back-to-back playoffs since the last time I won the 12-year-old Little League championship as a quarterback of the Terrytown
12-year-old Little League football.
Yeah, that would have been, 1991, which was the last time they won the Super Bowl. Yeah, that's the prevailing sentiment. I mean, clearly it's a better football team with McLaurin, and you don't want to do anything to stunt the growth of Jaden Daniels, and not having Terry McLaurin would obviously be a big deal on that. We'll do more on this at 10 o'clock. Meantime, Chris Collinsworth, who I didn't know this till yesterday, and, when you think of, at least for my generation, when you think of Monday Night Football, you think of Howard Cosell. I remember when it started in 1970, and Howard Cosell did 14 years. I mean, if when you're young, everything seems longer. So, anecdotally, I would say, oh, yeah, Howard Cosell, he was on Monday Night Football for 25 years. No, it was from 1970 to 1983, so that's 14 years. Well, Chris Collinsworth is about to break that record. He's about to go into his 15th year in prime time. He's worked with two different people, obviously. He worked with Al Michaels, and now he works with Mike Tirico. And he's close to my age, 65, 66, something like that. So I don't know how many more years he's going to go. And they may be grooming some others to take his place. I think Greg Olson would be a terrific replacement for him. But he's still rolling along and getting ready to do the opening game a week from Thursday when the Eagles open up defense of their championship against the Cowboys. You know, you'd think opening night for the NFL that Eagles against anybody would draw ratings. The Cowboys are a ratings magnet, and, you know, especially with all the news they've made in the offseason and whether or not they have Micah Parsons on the field or not, it's going to be a big draw for people to watch them. But that's the NFL. They just want to go, hey, let's see what happens if we put the defending champs up against the most valuable team in sports with the biggest following. Let's see what kind of number we get. And again, it's this is an NBC game. This is not a prime game, right? So although Thursday Night Football the rest of the year will be prime, this is NBC. So they're looking for an enormous number on that. But anyway, Collinsworth with Dan Patrick yesterday discussed a number of things, including Jalen Hurts, which we'll get to. But I thought this was interesting about how he sees quarterbacks developing, especially in this modern era.
And usually if you're playing quarterback in high school, you are the best athlete in the school, right? So your entire life, you've played tag, you've played freeze tag, you've played all these different games, right? Nobody could catch you. You were the best athlete. So you get on the football field, and what do you know how to do? All right, let me just run around. They can't catch me, and then I'll, make a play. And you watch Patrick Mahomes, and you watch Lamar Jackson, and you watch Josh Allen, and those are the guys that are competing for the MVP of the league. So I want to be able to do that too. But in reality, if you hold on to it, all you're doing is inviting more pressure. If you get back there in the pocket and you just go poop, poop, poop. I mean, Jackson Dart, I wouldn't blitz him if he got in a game for anything. Like, I want to see him throw the ball down the field a little bit and read out the defense fully. Those are the kinds of things that I think the adjustments are there in the National Football League. And Caleb Williams is probably the prime example of that. I think every analyst that went in there, and I think, as far as the top games, I'm the only one that wasn't a quarterback. So he heard it from everybody. Like, get the ball out of your hands. Like, dude, just get the ball out of your hands. It doesn't matter. Complete 70%. And that's what Ben Johnson's been trying to do with him. Just, hey, 70%. We got to hit 7 out of 10 of these. And that's really hard to do. That means a lot of checking down in the NFL. And that's where he's got to get to.
Yeah, look, this thing about getting the ball out of your hands, this is nothing new. Peyton Manning, who couldn't run any faster than I do, got it out of his hands immediately because he knew what he was doing as soon as he came to the line of scrimmage. And I go back to the days of Sonny Jurgensen when I saw him play even in the 60s and into the 70s. And when he was 40 years old, he led the league in passing percentage. Now, he only played about half the year because of injuries. But when he was in the game, he was completing passes because he knew the game. He called his own plays. It was a different era. But he, with an offensive line that wasn't good, by the way, he never really had a great offensive line. In fact, I don't think anybody who played with him ever got a sniff of the Hall of Fame. He got guys who were there for a long time, like Len Haas and maybe a couple of others. Terry Hermeling, I think, was there for some time. George Stark was there at the end of his career. But he never had a great offensive line. He didn't have the Hogs. But what he had was the ability to assess what the defense was doing quickly and get the ball out of his hands. And that's playing quarterback in the NFL. And what Caleb Williams did last year, what did he take, 60 sacks or something like that? He just didn't get the ball out of his hands quick enough. That's the key to playing quarterback, and being able to run, to buy time to make throws. That's part of it, but it's also assess what the defense is doing, look at your check downs, boom, get rid of the ball. This is more from Collinsworth, as he will call the game on Thursday night, a week from Thursday, with Jalen Hurts back on the field, and the question of where does Jalen Hurts exactly fit in the pantheon of quarterbacks?
I'm not sure that I've seen a story like his. I mean, I remember watching that national championship game when he got benched for Tua. And Tua gets in the game and throws the game-winning touchdown pass. They win the national championship. Everybody's going crazy. And I think most of us, maybe who are just parents, maybe those are the people but I was thinking, oh my God, that kid's career is over. Jalen Hurts' career is over. He's been a really good player, but there is no way mentally or emotionally he comes back from this. That it just can't happen, right? Goes off to Oklahoma. And I think he did a little bit of what we were just talking about. He had one of the highest completion percentages when he played for Oklahoma. Comes out, gets drafted in the second round. Universally, everybody was panning the pick. Oh, what are you doing? A second round quarterback. You might as well just throw it in the garbage can, whatever. But that's a team that was built around offensive line, built around defensive line. And to watch him and to meet him, you ever met him? You ever just had a conversation with him?
Yeah. He's impressive.
He's probably the most serious-minded football player I've ever met. I mean, to get a smile out of him, you feel like, you want to have a celebration. But he is all in. He's all in for his teammates. He's not afraid to lead. He's not afraid to put his head down and run. And when we talk about great players, what do we talk about? In the NFL, going from the 20 to the 20, anybody can do that. If you had any chance at all, you can do that. The game starts in two situations: in the red zone and short yardage, right? Those are the two. You got to convert on third and fourth down, and you got to score touchdowns when you get to the red zone. You're kicking field goals, you're going to lose in the NFL. And so what does this guy do better than anybody else? A, he hits a high percentage. B, he can run the ball he's not a Lamar Jackson, maybe more of a Josh Allen, kind of a big, strong, physical guy. But he scores touchdowns and he converts third downs. Some of them with his arm, some of them with his legs, some of them with just sheer power. Or, his brain, his audibles, because he studied the game so much. So, and it was interesting. I did an interview with Peyton Manning not too long ago, and he said that Jalen calls him all the time about how do you operate? What were you thinking here? What do you do there? And he's a real curious guy, but he is a dynamic guy. Would I want him as my quarterback? I would take him all day long. Plus, he sets the tone for that physical style of play. I mean, how frustrating would it be for a 300-pound, 350-pound defensive tackle to know he can't stop the quarterback on a quarterback sneak? That's making these teams insane. I mean, they tried to change the friggin' rule on them.
Yeah.
It's making them all crazy out there. So, I think very highly of him.
Well, what's different now, and you know this, is NFL teams drafted a quarterback, and then you had to kind of adopt that team's philosophy of what they do. Now it feels like you're catering your offense, whether it's Cam Newton or Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. We want to cater our offense to your strengths.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson's probably the top of that list, right?
Yeah.
So that was a Ozzie sitting there, and there's Lamar, last pick in the first round. And as it gets a little closer, he and John Harbaugh are having this conversation. And I've talked to both of them about it. And basically it was this: are we going to do this? Because we've got to change everything that we've ever thought about offense if we're going to do this. if we draft Lamar right here, and it's going to be your last pick as a general manager, it's going to be a bit of your legacy. Harbaugh, as a coach, have to totally commit to what he does, right? And at the time, obviously, if he's the 32nd pick, everybody else had a chance. They didn't think that highly of him, right? But the one thing that I thought about him from the beginning was that he was a pocket passer at Louisville. He was. That's what he was. Now, he scrambled out of that, and he ran, and he did different things. So, yeah, I think that in its entirety now, the league is about finding guys who can make those plays, who can escape pass rush, who can gain and convert third downs, strong enough to take a hit, smart enough to know how to run an offense. but have a good enough arm. And those are the guys. To me, those are the guys that are winning championships right now.
And I think they have one here who fits all of that. Maybe not as strong as you'd like, but it looked like Jaden Daniels did bulk up a little bit in the offseason. We'll get a full look at him, not just the 4 plays where he didn't throw a pass against Cincinnati, a full look at him a week from Sunday when they open up against the Giants at home. All right, much more on the Terry McLaurin contract extension and what Rick Neuheisel says about the Texas and Ohio State game to kick off the college football season this weekend. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. The legend of Bo Jackson made the Pro Bowl and the All-Star game in baseball in the same year and was the MVP of the baseball All-Star game. We may never see an athlete like that again. And 35 years ago today, he added to his legend by hitting his 4th home run in 4 consecutive at-bats. There's an asterisk to that, and we will get to that later this hour. Of course, a lot more on the Terry McLaurin contract extension, which was agreed to right after we ended the show yesterday. So wasn't exactly convenient for me, but a lot to catch up on, a lot of reaction to that and more as we roll towards 11 o'clock. Bram is coming up at 11, and I'm sure he'll have a lot more to say about the contract extension. Look, this was going to happen, one way or another. I mean, there was going to be an extension. It just didn't make sense for either side for Terry McLaurin to go into the season in the last year of his contract. It was more to the advantage of the team because they had a lot of options. They could either franchise him at the end of the year or let him go. And the production for receivers over the age of 30, the numbers tell you that it's not good, that they're getting somebody with diminishing returns who's about to turn 30. And remember, it's an extension. It's a 3-year extension, so he's still got another year to go. So with, I think, a lot of the money plowed into that final year of the deal, is he going to get there at the age of 33, right? He would be going into that season at 33. This one, he's going to be 30. And then the first 2 years, 31, 32. So he'd be going into age 33 in the final year of the contract. And, here are the numbers. I mean, you can find all different kinds of numbers on this, but you know that receivers start to decline at that age. Receivers not named, like Jerry Rice. And this is what Barry Zerluga has in his column. Last 15 years of the NFL, dating back to 2010, 17 receivers aged 31 or older have accounted for 25 1,000-yard seasons. Most were produced either by some of the best pass catchers of their era, Andre Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald, Steve Smith Sr., Anquan Bolden, or players who were go-to targets for some of the best quarterbacks ever. Wes Welker, Julian Edelman with Tom Brady, Reggie Wayne and with Peyton Manning, and Jordy Nelson with Aaron Rodgers, 3 Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels may be a Hall of Fame quarterback, but he's just getting started. The rest of what he has played with, and to Terry's credit, he has never complained about the quarterback situation. Nothing to complain about last year, but you're talking about Case Keenum and Dwayne Haskins and Alex Smith on one leg and Kyle Allen and Taylor Heineke and Carson Wentz, and he's had 4 straight seasons of catching 1,000 yards worth of passes. He has not missed a game in 4 years. And there are a lot of things that are in his favor, but I would say this, too. He's had several concussions during his career, dating back to when he was at Ohio State. And they keep a closer watch on those these days. And at some point, if he has another one or two, then you really have to start to worry about that. And that's the thing about, when you give out this kind of money, $96 million, $30 million in bonus, and we don't know what the guaranteed money is yet. And I would imagine it's not as great as some of the other deals, or we would have heard about it by now. But it's still a big financial commitment for a team that has to account for a number of other free agents that are coming up at the end of the year or need extensions, like Laramie Tunsil and Frankie Louvu. Maybe they want to keep Marshawn Lattimore and Deebo Samuel. Those are things that they have to be thinking about, so they weren't going to give it away. But this is Tom Lavero today in his column about what this means, particularly to Jaden Daniels. And let's face it, I mean, for the next 10 years, this franchise is going to be all about number 5. making sure he has the protection, making sure he has the weapons. Of course, they're going to concentrate on the defense, but this is something that they have not had, and I don't even think they used to call it a franchise quarterback back then. But realistically, even though they won a Super Bowl with Doug Williams, who was, beat up at that point, he'd taken a real beating in Tampa Bay, and won another one with Mark Rippon, who was one of the slowest guys ever to play that position. The last real franchise quarterback they had was Joe Theismann, right? Yeah, and the last Hall of Fame quarterback that they had was Sonny Jurgensen, and that was, over 50 years ago. So they haven't had this, and this is what the franchise is going to be all about, and making sure that he has the weapons like Terry McLaurin at this point, going to be key to his career. And then, Tom writes about the last holdout that McLaurin had before signing that 3-year, $71 million extension 3 years ago. But he says, but back then, he was holding out from an insane asylum, the most dysfunctional franchise in the NFL, a team that had just changed its name for the second time since he was drafted in 2019. He had already played with 9 quarterbacks since his rookie year and was about to play that season with a washed-up Carson Wentz. And then he talked about the Eastern Motors news conference on July 15th. And he said at that news conference, which was correct, McLaurin said this: when things were adverse, when there was a lot of chaos going on, I held firm, I held strong, I held my head high. I was a leader. 1,000%. I think that was one of the more remarkable things about watching him in his first 6 years, especially the first 5, when it was just, awful quarterback play. Never complained about that. More from Tom Lovero's column. Daniels' Commanders are what McLaurin has been waiting for an organization led by leaders with a room full of teammates who could all hold their heads up high. To have gone into this season in the final year of his contract with no commitment beyond would have been the sort of personal test McLaurin thought he had left behind when Dan Quinn and Adam Peters arrived. He would have had little choice, save for actually missing regular season games in an extended holdout, but it would have been a cloud hanging over the locker room until resolved. Yeah, I mean, he wasn't going to hold out. He wasn't going to miss games because the $22.5 million that he's going to make this year, that's divided into 17 checks. He wasn't going to miss one of those. That wasn't going to happen. Some more numbers, and a lot of different numbers that you could have between Terry McLaurin and Jaden Daniels. For example, Daniels posted a QBR of 90.6 out of 100 when targeting McLaurin. Of his 12 passes that went 30 yards or more, 6 of them went to Terry McLaurin. Daniels, as Tom writes, has thrown 25 touchdowns in his NFL career. McLaurin has caught 13 of them. He is a 2-time Pro Bowler, was named second-team All-Pro last year when he caught 82 passes for over 1,000 yards in his fifth straight 1,000-yard season. So there's a lot that goes into Terry McLaurin on and off the field, and having him here with an average value of about $32 million. He's one of the 6 highest paid receivers in the league, along the lines of A.J. Brown and Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. I mean, he's in that ballpark there with average salary. Question is, how much of that money is guaranteed? We don't know that yet. But this is a win, I think, win-win for the Commanders and Terry McLaurin, and was the lead story on PTI yesterday, hosted by Frank Isola and Mina Kimes.
Does this signing make the Commanders contenders in your eyes?
It does, but only because they're in the NFC. To be honest, if they were in the AFC, I would not answer yes. I love what the McLaurin signing does to sustain the momentum they built on offense last year. I also like the additions of Laramie Tunsil, Deebo Samuel. I don't think Jaden Daniels is going to regress. But this Commanders defense, Frank, was bottom 10 last year in both DVOA and success rate. And when I look at them, I don't see a lot of improvement on that side of the ball. Then you look at the AFC, the likes of the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Bills, they're just more balanced. In the NFC, though, outside of Philadelphia, it feels wide open to me. So while I don't think they're going to win the division, and I kind of doubt you disagree, I do think that they have a chance to make another postseason run.
All right, so truth be told, we were trying to discuss what we're going to talk about, and Mina today told the producers there's a chance maybe McLaurin will sign. Next thing you know, he has signed, but he signed a deal. But for me, it was official when Magic Johnson tweeted about it. Then I knew it was a done deal when Magic weighs in on the Commanders. I think you're right. Let's remember one thing about the division. You have the defending Super Bowl champs are there. The Cowboys, let's face it, at any moment they could have a breakout season. And I do think The Giants will be a little bit better. But when you do have a quarterback like that, who won 2 playoff games, and prior to last season, the Commanders had gone 19 years winning 1 playoff game. So that kind of quarterback, you're always going to be a contender. You're right about the NFC. I love what they did with this signing, though. It was a smart thing to do. That's a terrific tandem with quarterback and wide receiver. Don't mess with that. Here would be the other thing, though, with the Commanders. Remember, last year in the NFL, they had 19 scoring drives in the fourth quarter. That means a lot of their games were close. 4th most in the NFL. They surrendered 20, which was the 6th most in the NFL.
Yeah.
So, and they had 12 games, Mina, decided within 8 points. So they play a lot of close games. Remember the Hail Mary game they had against the Bears?
Yeah.
So I love the quarterback, but I think the division is better. Do I expect to see them playing the Super Bowl? I'm not so sure about that right now.
They also converted like a historic rate of 4th downs, which, to do the nerd thing here, is likely to regress this season. As far as the Eagles go, the run defense in particular concerns me. I said they had a bottom 10 defense, bottom 5 run defense. Philadelphia put over 200 yards on the ground on them. Granted, they did that to a lot of people. And again, if they were to face them again in the NFC Championship, it's hard for me not to pick Philadelphia.
Yeah, and when you look at Daniels, now listen, he could have a sophomore slump. That obviously could happen. But he does seem to have that it factor. Like, he carries himself like a franchise quarterback. He looks like he has a presence on the field, right?
The second I pulled up the nerd stats and talked about regression, you had to go to the it factor. I knew you were going to.
That's right.
I don't disagree.
And one other thing, too, I love the way McLaurin handled this. It was the hold out, hold in, request a trade, and then he gets the big deal, and he'll be ready to play by week 1 against the Giants. Good job by him, his agent, and the Commanders as well.
I agree. I think it's good for both sides, and we can soon move on from this. One other lingering thing, and I think, once the deal gets signed, people forget, but you could tell that the tide was shifting a little bit in recent weeks. Like, enough already. Let's get this done. McLaurin off the PUP list, not practicing, causes Dan Quinn to snap a little bit. I'm not going to play Where's Waldo here, and Cliff Kingsbury saying it's fine that we can do all these mental reps, but I need him on the grass. I need to see him on the field with Jaden. So it was getting to the point where something had to happen. And then it was not a great look on Saturday when it was like 80 degrees and McLaurin shows up with a hooded sweatshirt. Looked like he was pouting a little bit on the sidelines there. Had not even shown up in the previous exhibition game against Cincinnati. So it was going in the direction, it looked like, of the team. So as much beloved as Terry McLaurin is, there is that, and it caused Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network yesterday to wonder about this.
This is an organization now that is more of the organization that does things right as opposed to the way it was in the past, which is basically an organization that did everything wrong. Paying one of your best players, even if it's a little more than you wanted. It's like, okay, let's say the deal comes in at $30 million. Okay, fine. So you wanted to pay $29 million. All right, so you overpay a little bit for one of your good players. That's fine. I'm really curious to see what the fan base actually ends up thinking about Terry McLaurin, because it got a little not great.
Yeah.
I think the fans were kind of a little out on him, like some of the antics, and he did what he needed to do to get paid, and I think he should have done that. Mm-hmm. But the fans felt some sort of way about Terry McLaurin during this whole process. I'm curious to see where that goes.
Yeah, I think that gets forgotten, especially if he has a big game against the Giants, but if he doesn't, and maybe there's an injury along the way, hopefully not serious, that could also impact that. But I think there's a big coming from the fan base today. So here we are. It's the 26th of August. What do we have? 5 days left in the month, and we're heading into week 2 of the college football season. We had college football starting on August the 23rd. How much further can they back it up, especially when they play the national championship game now in mid-January? I mean, it's a long, long haul. And that student-athlete stuff, forget about it. There's no time to go to class. They're practicing and playing football all the time. Anyway, Rick Neuheisel was on the Dan Patrick Show yesterday. And the marquee game of this weekend is the high noon kickoff on Fox. And these are two teams that potentially either one of them could win the national championship. Ohio State did last year, and Texas with Arch Manning could do it this year. Now, they're meeting in the Horseshoe on Saturday, so the home field advantage goes to the defending champs. But it's, it's not unheard of that you have two marquee teams kicking off the season against each other. But in most cases, they start out with, kind of cupcake games just to kind of get their feet wet. But this is going to be big. Rick Neuheisel not doing the game. He works for CBS. But this was his view of what we can expect on Saturday when he talked to Dan Patrick yesterday.
What's fascinating about this game is that you've got two quarterbacks with relatively little experience. And I think the two coaches, Sark and Ryan, will basically play a very cat and mouse game. I think this is a low-scoring game. Try to make sure that your quarterback's comfortable. Don't throw him to the wolves too early. And I think it's going to be a wonderful setting.
Who's winning the Big Ten this year?
I think Penn State. If not now, when, right? They've got so many things coming back. The two running backs are fantastic. They've got the most experienced quarterback in the league. They've got James Franklin has proven he can recruit. They're wonderful defenders. And they've got a schedule to beat the band, right? They've got three. They're it's basically preseason football for the first three games. I think it's Nevada, FIU, and Villanova to start the season, then a bye, then you get the whiteout game versus Oregon. So everything sets up for Penn State this year.
What about the SEC?
I'm going to go with LSU. I think Garrett Nussmeier is the real deal. We all remember both Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels. I think this guy is going to have a heck of a game in Death Valley, although with a small D, I guess, given that it's not Baton Rouge. I think he and Klubnik are going to put on a show, but I think Nussmeier is going to come out on top.
We have 12 teams now in a playoff, probably going to 14 or 16 at some point. But then the Big Ten leaks a proposal for 24 to 28 teams. Why did they leak that?
To me, it was almost to get people to understand 16 is the right number. Sometimes if you have 12 and people are sitting there, maybe 12 is the right number, and then you throw 24 or 28 out, somewhere, if compromise is where we're going to be, compromise now goes to 16. As I like to say, the answer is money. Now, what was the question? I think we're going to 16. The fact that no team with a bye last year won shows the lack of value of that bye. And I think 16 will be a great number for college football.
16. Now, one of the things about college football that's been attractive over the years is the importance of every regular season game. It's not that long ago that you played 10. And there was actually a period of time when national championships were decided before the bowl games. Maryland's one national title from 1953. They lost the bowl game. I think they played Oklahoma, and they lost. But they went undefeated during the regular season, so they were declared national champions. If you go to 16, what does that mean for the importance of regular season games? Because, it'd be routine now. You big-time program, you lose 2 games, big deal. You're still going to be in the playoff, and you want to be ready to go for the playoff. And what about the idea of this? Let's just say that a team is going to be in the playoff, and then at the end of the season, and this might actually change some of the scheduling, at the end of the season when you play your big rivalry game, let's say, for example, Alabama is heading into the Iron Bowl against Auburn, and Auburn's really good, and Auburn is trying to get to the playoff. Like, they're not quite there. Maybe they have 2 losses and they need to beat Alabama to get in. And Alabama's got maybe 1 loss or they're undefeated, and they're going to be in. Do you want to run the risk of losing your starting quarterback in the game? No, you don't. You want treat it like the NFL, where the starter, if everything is wrapped up, the starter sits in the last game of the season, like Patrick Mahomes has in the past, and many other great quarterbacks over the years, because it's a game you don't have to win. And what does that mean for those great rivalry games? Oh, and maybe the quarterback's a Heisman Trophy candidate, but he's already got it wrapped up because he's had such a great season. Is that really going to be great for college football? I'm not sure. Is it going to kill it? No, because it's as big as it's been. And a big reason is television. And the other thing about college football that differs from the NFL, yeah, you can get a raucous crowd at an NFL game, and that means something. But the pageantry of the college football, and you got stadiums, and they're getting smaller now in the NFL because of the television. Used to have to be 80,000 to hold a Super Bowl. We had one in Vegas a couple of years ago where 61,000 were there. So it's not, the big house like Michigan or 100,000, everybody wearing white and waving white towels at Penn State and all that. No, it's a different look in college football than the NFL, and in many ways makes it more attractive for television. But still, if you have that many teams getting in and you have pretty much assurances that you're going to be in going into the last game of the season, and they're big rivalry games, whether it's USC and UCLA or some years, Clemson and South Carolina, where they're both good, those kind of games used to be, oh, wow, this is going to be big, and let's see who stays in contention for the national. Oh, yeah, it doesn't mean anything to Alabama, so they're resting the quarterback. Think about that. Neuheisel would disagree with that. This is Neuheisel on what this expansion, what he projects 16 teams for a playoff, would mean.
I understand the argument, but I just saw an analytic piece of data where K-State, and losing to Iowa State over there in Dublin, now their playoff chances shrink to 13%. So remember, if even at 16, the number is much smaller than any other sports league out there in terms of who gets to graduate to the playoffs. We have 137 teams in Division I football. So the facts of the matter are the regular season is still very, very exciting. These preseason games are testament to that. And then you get to that month of November with so many more teams are still in the hunt, it just gets overwhelming. And if we go to automatic qualifiers, which I think will be the answer, again, with the premise that the answer is money, what was the question? We get to automatic qualifiers, you can only imagine the influx of more playoff games, much like the NBA, where both the SEC and Big Ten will have play-in games.
SEC going to 9-game schedule.
Yeah,
means
that the coaches didn't get their way. I think Greg Sankey did his best to try to listen to them and see if it made sense. But when Oklahoma is selling seats at a post-game press conference and Tennessee's selling advertising that's going to appear on the field, you can see the athletic directors are in need of money. And rather than keep shaking down the boosters, they're going, let's go to that 9th conference game. Our television partners will pay more for it. It now creates an opportunity with the Big Ten to create some non-conference games that will be paid for handsomely. It's a money play, and it's the right move.
What did you think of the NCAA's punishment with Michigan?
Much ado about nothing. The guy who is most guilty is still coaching in the NFL. Now, had they done something to Jim Harbaugh and he had to sit a little bit in the NFL, that would have been something. But and remember, that's exactly what they did with Jim Tressel when he was got his hand in the cookie jar with that tattoo gate thing. They made him sit as he was working for the Colts at the time. This is a big fine, $20 million, maybe even north of that. But at day's end, it was worth it for those who said Michigan versus the world.
Would you have punished Harbaugh?
I would have. Yeah, if the punishment could have gone to sit him down, because that flew in the face of what we're all about in terms of fair play. And listen, I know I've always had a bent against Harbaugh, so I'm real kind of careful about my personal bias about it. But at day's end, if we really want to curtail this stuff, that's the punishment should have followed the criminal.
Notre Dame doesn't have to join a conference now, ever, because all they have to do is go 10-2, and they're going to be in the playoffs because they're a brand.
And can get whether it's home games or can get the bye, right? The seeding thing changed. So Jack Swarbrick goes down as a hero. Not only did he fight for their independence, he also has got them in a chance where they can be part of the field on an annual basis, and they can schedule around it. That will be the interesting thing. Who will schedule Notre Dame, and can they freeze them out to force them into a conference? That remains to be seen.
But, they're playing USC, but that's going away.
Right.
They're not playing Michigan. I mean, they're going to play some ACC, schedule teams, but
that's right.
10-2 seems pretty reasonable every year for Notre Dame.
I would agree, and they've got a nice recruiting machinery. This is a good thing for Notre Dame, but there will be some clamoring back and forth after a few years of this. This is in its infancy, but after a few years, if they don't schedule up, and it'll be interesting as to the Big Ten and the SEC, how much they'll schedule them. You can see both of those conferences involved with the Notre Dame right now.
Yeah, look, they lost last year to Northern Illinois at home and still made the playoff. And what they're talking about with the way that the setup is, last year when they expanded to 12 teams, they said, Notre Dame can't be one of the top 4 teams with a bye because we're only going to give those to conference champions. They're not in a conference. They play an ACC schedule for some of their games, but they're not in the ACC for football. They are for basketball. Now that's changed. So as Dan said, all they have to do is go 10-2, and sometimes they can get a bye. And they're not playing USC anymore. They're not playing Michigan. They're going to be good. I don't really have a problem with that. I like dynasties. I like name teams, and worked with Tony for many years, and he's always called Notre Dame the University of Football. Like, when we were growing up, when I was a kid, there weren't many games on television, and even the Notre Dame games that weren't on television, on Sunday morning they would have the Notre Dame highlights voiced by Lindsey Nelson. Further action in the same series of plays, and they would scope the game down to like an hour. Here's Rick Slagle, hitting Tom Gatewood and, all that. And when you got to know these guys because you watch that. Well, they're not on those highlights anymore. They don't have to be because every game is on TV just about. All the home games are property of NBC, and then networks are picking up the road games. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing for me. Because I think that familiarity is a good thing. And Notre Dame being really good in football and being in the playoff every year is not a problem. You love them or you hate them, right? I mean, that's good. That's what you want to get people interested in watching the game. A couple of other football notes. You may have heard Dave Portnoy from Barstool, he runs Barstool, is going to be a part of the Fox Big Noon Kickoff. They put him on the show. And as I've told you, I'm not a stoolie. I don't watch Barstool content, but I am addicted to the Portnoy pizza reviews. They come up I watch those on Facebook every evening. So he's really good at that. But he's going to be on this. He's a polarizing guy, and more importantly, he is a Michigan guy. He went to the University of Michigan, wears that on his sleeve. So he's going to be part of the crew, but he's not going to be allowed in the stadium. Their setup is outside of the Horseshoe. So once that show is over, you're not getting in. And according to there's Front Office Sports, which broke this story. One source said Fox anticipated having issues with Portnoy and Ohio State, and the network's original plan did not include him entering the stadium. Now, he put up a shot of himself on Facebook or some social media with a mustache and glasses on, and the former Michigan assistant Connor Stallion said, "You need tickets." That's the guy that put Michigan on probation. So that's only going to add to the intrigue for this. It's going to have more people watching the pregame show. I'm sure they wanted this to get out. Oh, what's Portnoy going to say about that? Oh, is he going to try and enter the stadium, and they're going to try and stop him on that? That's good for Fox that got out. This is not good. It's sad to hear that Bobby Ross, who's now 88 years old, is not going to be there when Georgia Tech opens the season at Colorado on Friday. That game is on ESPN. Bobby Ross, who led Georgia Tech to a share of the national title, 1990. He's 88 years old now, and he is suffering from leukemia.
that is going to keep him away. It's called chronic lymphatic leukemia, and he says most people can live with it, but he's having issues with it because of his age and so forth. He lives in Richmond with his wife. He's been retired from coaching since 2006 when he coached at Army, but he is one of those guys that I think has been overlooked as one of the great coaches of all time. Pete Carroll won a national championship at USC, 2 of them, I think, before they had the playoff, and then he won a Super Bowl with Seattle. Bobby Ross, pretty close, share of the national title when he was at when he was at Georgia Tech, and then he also led the San Diego Chargers to the Super Bowl. They got blown out by San Francisco, but he got them there, and I don't think he really gets enough credit for that. And he's the one that took over at Maryland when Jerry Claiborne left to go back to Kentucky. And he did an excellent job there. He had Boomer Esiason. They went to a bowl game just about every year. They won the ACC title every year. And then they had the Len Bias tragedy, and the whole athletic program collapsed, and he left. But he had Ralph Friedgen with him and in both stops, both at Georgia Tech and with the Chargers. And Boomer Esiason was pushing Debbie Yao to hire Ralph Friedgen as the coach. There were 3 other coaches. I think Joe Krivak took over. He got him to some crappy little bowl. And then they had Mark Duffner, and they had Ron Vanderlinden from Penn State. And both of those hires, Duffner, good guy, run and shoot, but that he didn't have much success there. Never got Maryland to a bowl. And then once you had Vanderlinden, he never did it either. And then Ralph took over after Boomer goes, hey, come on, I've been pushing him for 2 hires. You wouldn't do it. Hire him. And the reason they wouldn't hire Ralph Friedgen because he was fat. There was fat prejudice against him. And he came in and shut everybody up with 3 straight 10-win seasons. They went to the Orange Bowl the first year, and he was a hell of a coach. And he loved Maryland. He played football at Maryland and had been an assistant coach there. So, Bobby Ross deserves, I think, a lot of credit for what he did as a coach and what he also did for Maryland as a coach there. And then, having Ralph Friedgen to say to Debbie Yao, hire this guy. He was the assistant coach of the year in college football, and Ralph did a hell of a job in the 10 years that he coached there. He pissed a lot of people off there, I'll tell you that. He wasn't the most diplomatic guy, but did a wonderful job as the head coach. Anyway, we got serenity now at Ashburn. Terry McLaurin is signed. It is not serenity, though, for a bunch of football players as they are nervously looking at their phones. They don't tell you if you made the team, but if you get a text that you need to come see the coach, that's a text you don't want to get. I guess you could say, my phone's not working. My phone died. I can't find my phone. I don't know if that'll work, but it is going to be a tough day for a bunch of football players. Bram is coming up next. I'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.